Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to some more StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void beta. Today I want to be talking about Zerg vs Zerg and how it has changed the early part of the game. Now for forever, basically since the beginning of Wings of Liberty, Zerg vs Zerg early game has been the same. Like, you know, there have been some developments I suppose with some gas display and maybe some different builds that people used to do. For example, at like the very early beginning of Wings of Liberty, people used to one base a lot more and do like some Zergling and Baneling like one base pushes and whatnot. And that's sort of like faded away over time. And right now everyone is doing like these Zergling Baneling stuff or gases openers where you go towards the middle part of the game where everyone is just playing Roaches. Or if you play Mutas, you're gonna have to like play defensive Roaches, all these kind of things. I'm gonna be talking in this video about how Zerg vs Zerg has changed so far in Legacy of the Void. And keep in mind, this is the early part of the beta. There's like 100 things that will probably still be changing. But as it stands right now, ZVZ early game has changed not as much as the other matchups, but still quite a lot. What I've been noticing a lot recently especially, is that people are opening still with a lot of Zerglings, but much sooner than you would see in Heart of the Swarm, people are transitioning towards Ravagers and some Roaches as well. Now the main reason for that is that Ravagers have this tendency to sort of like take on the role of the Baneling. And what I mean with that is that the Corrosive Bio ability, which is the activated spell of the Ravager, also actually allows you to kill Zerglings of your opponent very, very quickly, as long as you micro well, and your opponent gonna have to counter micro versus that. But it also means that static defense, such as like spine crawlers and whatnot, which are very common in Heart of the Swarm, are gonna be a little bit weaker for the simple fact that you can walk up the ramp, spam like 6 corrosive bios on that one spine crawler, and all of a sudden that spine crawler is gonna be down. So that's exactly what is gonna be happening in this game as well. It's gonna be a lot of back and forth action versus a guy named Silverheart. Right now we are watching this game through my vision, by the way, so I can talk about the things that I was thinking about while playing this game. It's gonna be a lot of back and forth action with Zergling speed early on, which is very common like right now, like I said, and then we're both gonna switch to Ravagers and Roaches, and this seems to be sort of like the average game right now. Now ZVZ at this moment in time hasn't really developed yet to the point where people are very comfortable playing the middle part of the game, because quite honestly games just sort of end before that real stage settles down. But let's talk real quickly about the Ravager. So what is the Ravager really all about? So the Ravager, once again, it morphs off of a Roach, and it actually does more damage. It has an activated ability that does splash damage also to friendly units, but on top of that, it actually has less health than a Roach, and obviously it's also very expensive. The total cost for a Ravager is 100 minerals and 100 gas. So it's kind of an interesting unit, because Roaches, technically speaking, are gonna be tankier and better at like playing defensive. However, Ravagers do more damage, so if you play them defensively, you're gonna kill stuff faster. So you want to have like a healthy mix of Ravagers, Roaches, and Zerglings. And then Zerglings obviously for the reinforcing army that you use to actually get across the map faster, but also so you can actually surround your opponent's Ravagers and Roaches. And with that, because Ravagers are 100 minerals and 100 gas, there is very little option to actually go for more aggression, for the simple fact that you won't be able to afford Banelings, because they also require a lot of gas. So it's been a very interesting matchup recently. Now, I did scout a little bit around to that game. One thing to note that you may have noticed right there is that my opponent did have the double gas taken in the main base. So even though you really haven't seen me getting very many units so far, I am pretty much convinced right now that my opponent is going to be playing this exact style as well. Because quite honestly, it's super normal right now. Double gas in the main base is pretty much a dead giveaway that he is gonna go for some quick Ravager play. Because, well, if, like, let's say he would have gone for attack up to Hydralisk or something like that, he would probably not be able to survive. But there we go. I see a lot of Zerglings running across the map right now, which means that I'm gonna have to respond with my own Zerglings. I already have the Spine Crawler down, which once again is gonna be good early game, but as soon as Ravagers come out, he's gonna be able to nuke that thing down very quickly. And in the meantime, I've also been getting my own Roach Warren out. So the Roach Warren right here, as you can see, it is about, I don't know, yeah, it's actually just now finishing up right now, so I'm gonna start producing some defensive Roaches as well. Now, I believe in the pre-alpha, in like the custom map that people made, I'm not 100% sure of that. Oh, this is something we want to talk about as well. In the pre-alpha of the game, you would actually get more HP as well on the Ravagers, but right now it actually is completely different. But here we go. Gonna be a little bit of defense. I want to try my very best to defend this to the best of my abilities, but here you can see Corrosive Bile right there on the Spine Crawler, and what happens, the Spine Crawler just sort of dies. Now, I will be able to hang on right here because of the defender's advantage, and I will actually get a nice little supply lead because of it. Ravagers do die a little bit faster, as you can see, especially things like Zerglings or whatnot. But yeah, it's always gonna be interesting. So once again, Corrosive Bio, ooh, do have to dodge that one. Do manage to get that. Gonna use one of my Roaches to target fire down that last Ravagers. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about right there as well, is that in the early part of the game, in Zerg vs Zerg, Overlords are all of a sudden not really a safe bet anymore. As you may have noticed, it takes 4 shots for the Corrosive Bile to kill a Overlord. So right there you can see an opponent's Overlord. I think I will activate it. There we go. And I will activate that ability and actually kill a bunch of my Zerglings as well as killing his Overlord. But that's a huge change as well. That alone will already change ZVZ up a lot. So as you can see, so far, my opponent went for some aggression early on. I managed to barely hold on to that. I overmade units for defense, and right now I am running across the map once more, trying to do damage to my opponent while getting a 3rd base up and trying to get a slight macro lead. And, well, believe it or not, my opponent is going to be able to hold on to this aggression once more as well, while killing another Overlord right there. And things are just going to go super back and forth. So keep in mind, these things are not as tanky as Roaches are. Ravagers are not as tanky as Roaches are, so they die very quickly. And all of a sudden, my opponent will be able to clean up for the most part of my army. You can see I still have a massive supply lead. But that apparently isn't really coming into play. But you can see how this matchup has changed a lot. Where you would in the past see mostly like a lot of Zerglings and Banelings, all of a sudden everyone is just switching it up to a lot of Zerglings, sometimes a little bit of Banelings, but mainly Roaches and Ravagers, just because they have sort of like fulfilled that need, it feels like, of the Baneling early on. Now that's not to say that's gonna stay that way forever. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point someone figures out like a beautiful timing that will completely blind counter this. But like, well actually, probably you could just go ahead and make a lot of Zerglings and Banelings anyway. And still do a substantial amount of damage. But obviously, once there's a suitable amount of army, it's gonna be a pretty good one. Now, I do actually manage to attack move right there on the Queen, except actually on attack moving on his army. And I ended up losing a lot of my army right there. Pretty big mistake. I do have a Lair going down right now as well. Now, one thing to note as well about Zerg vs Zerg is that Mutalisks are very uncommon right now for a couple reasons. It seems that the new speed burrowed Roaches, and yes, Roaches now actually get extra movement speed when you get the burrow movement, or the glider reconstitution, so the burrow is, or the speed upgrade for Roaches. They also now move faster underground. That seems to completely counter any kind of Mutalisk play. Like, let's say right now my opponent would go for some Mutalisk and I have speed Roaches out. I will simply just burrow, and since that burrow will actually be able to outrun Overlords right now, it's like a complete change in the metagame. Because you can just burrow your Roaches, get out of trouble, and just sort of attack at 10 fronts at once. But that's a completely different story. I'll try and find a different game for that. But especially Zerg vs Zerg early game has been a lot of, or like a lot more aggressive recently, with less Baneling play, more Ravagers, and you know, more Roaches as well, while trying to squeeze out that that 3rd base right now. So my opponent does end up getting a couple of my Overlords right there. I'm gonna try my very hardest right now to get a massive army going, as well as a couple of upgrades. I do see, okay, my opponent is moving across the map right now, so I'm gonna have to be careful. Notice, by the way, I don't have that many Ravagers. Once again, I don't want to have too many Ravagers. I want to have a majority of Roaches, maybe half and half at the very most, but just so I can keep on you know, spamming the corrosive bile ability, but also have something to actually shield away while the Ravagers do their damage. So what you can usually calculate a Ravager to cost is 100 minerals, 100 gas, but how I like to calculate it is that like one Ravager is about the cost of 2 Roaches. It's actually a pretty massive loss if you manage to actually lose a couple of them right here. So if I'm trading 2 Roaches for 1 Ravager, I will take that. Now it turns out in a one-on-one battle, I don't know exactly how a Ravager and a Roach do in a one-on-one battle, but it will definitely be more cost efficient for the Roaches, and you can see that come into play right here as well. I will just simply be able to outproduce my opponent with having that 3rd base up. But hopefully this game showed you a little bit more about the Zerg vs Zerg early game. Definitely a massive change compared to what it used to be like just, you know, well, I guess you could say right now in Heart of the Swarm as well, but just a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's very cool. It's gonna be interesting how this matchup develops and what the mid game is gonna be all about. I mean, if it turns out that there's gonna be a lot of Ravager Hydra play with the Hydra upgrades merged and the Roach speed as well early on that you can actually be really annoying with, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden we will see like some crazy Lurker play with some like overseers patrolling areas so these speed burrowed Roaches can't actually get pied at. And it's gonna be super interesting how this matchup goes. There's like 10 different directions. As you can see, I'm kind of a nerd. I'm kind of pumped up for the future of this. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, hit that like button. If you want to see more, hit that subscribe button as well, so you will be the very first one to get a notification when I upload another video. I want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile. and I will see you in the next one.